What's up, guys? Welcome to a new video. So today I'm going to talk about how astrology is not fortune telling. Now, what do I mean when I say astrology is not fortune telling, and why is it so important? Well, a lot of people will come to you who don't know much about astrology and as an astrologer, and you'll hear all kinds of questions like, "Oh, am I going to die right now?" Or "When am I going to meet my soulmate?" Or "When am I going to get rich?" You hear these questions that people who really don't have any and it's not offensive, it's just that people who don't have any idea of what astrology is, they'll ask things like that. Or the classic is tell me about myself, right? That's a little bit more on brand, but still. So when I say astrology is not fortune telling, what I mean is that I am not someone who can look at your upcoming transits, your upcoming solar return, right? Based on your natal chart and tell you definitively this is going to happen or this is not going to happen, right? I deal with this a lot when I have my predictive astrology sessions where someone, a lot of times it is around love, but it's not always that. It could be something career wise, could be something family wise, but it's that question of, when is this going to happen or, or how are things going to go with my existing relationship or, something of that sort, something, businessy, whatever. And what I'm able to do is I'm able to look at certain indicators. I'm able to tell you, okay, well, like, let's say, for example, your Saturn is about to square or, even conjunct your Venus, which is, your seventh house cusp or your Venus or whatever, right? So, that's definitely a time where you need to watch out. If you're in a relationship right now, be careful, right? Because it could be a time where things might sour out a little bit. They might not feel as potent and as sweet and as flowy as you're used to them feeling. And then you might think that that's a problem with the relationship or, or with your partner when really it's something energetic that will pass, right? So that's like one example of how you can be prepared. But like for me to say, oh, this is definitively going to happen, that depends on so many factors, right? That depends on the free will, slash the maturity of the two people, how much work, yes, you have the composite and the compatibility between those two people, right? You also would look at transits and, progressions related to the composite chart, the combined chart of the two people. But really, there's something in astrology that's not shown in the chart, which is what you've done with your free will to manifest either the higher or the lower levels of your chart. Now, this is extremely important because in every chart, whether it's a natal chart of a human, a chart of a relationship, an event, whatever, there is a high and there's a low, and there's every level in between level of manifestation. So, for the couple, right? And let's get two examples. Both couples are going through like that same Saturn, whether Saturn is conjunct one person's Venus or conjunct the other person's descendant, whatever. Let's just say both couples are going through something very similar astrologically, but one couple has worked through a lot of that stuff, or even one couple has a lot of Saturnian energy in their composite, or in their synastry already. So like just by them having come together, they instantly dealt with that archetype of Saturn. Well, they're going to be way more prepared than the couple who everything's been rosy and they've been together. How long have they been together? Maybe the couple that's been together 20 years and that's been through like so many transits and overcome everything. Well, they're probably going to be fine. But if it's a couple where everything's been all rosy posy, rainbowy and perfect, and they come across a tough transit, it could be really, really tough, right? So that's kind of how you have to look at things. You have to really like, and I teach this. I teach astrology 101. If anyone wants to take classes with me, please feel free to reach out. You can message me on Instagram at Jesse Innocent Astro or email me jesseinnocentastrology@gmail.com. And go to my website jesseinnocentastrology.com is where you sign up. But you can feel free to ask me some questions. You can voice message or whatever first. But yeah, so you have this whole web of different potential experiences. And sorry, my camera keeps doing this. You have this whole web of potential experiences that you can't just look at from one standpoint. You have to really like take nature and nurture, right? You have to like take the environment. You have to take the experience of the people, and that's why, like in this type of situation, you can instead of predicting something, you can give a web of potentials around what themes could be present. That's what astrology does. Like what themes could be present at a certain time. Like, I'll be honest, like myself, up until now, I was able to predict that my life would get better somehow in June/July of this year, when it's been, very, at least on personally, like, I've been dealing with insane Neptune transits, and Saturn transits, over the past 3 years, right? For Neptune, and really the last year for Saturn. So I was able to look at this and say, okay, big picture, well, I have my Jupiter return, and more so, I have the clearing out of really difficult transits. And I look at my progress chart. Okay, my progress moon moves from Pisces to Aries, right? And you kind of combine that with other factors, and you're like, okay, well, it's probably going to be some good things, but good things don't always come so obviously, right? For me, it's in the least obvious thing ever. I'm in LA right now. I'm not going to go into details, but I'm doing really well, and it's like in a place I would never expect to be staying. Like, I'm like loving, like, I've always been very critical of America, and here I am in LA, you know, whatever. We'll see what happens. I don't live here or anything, but I'm staying here. So that's a little bit of a taste, right? Now, when it comes to a natal chart, that same question can be applied, and people can put a lot of pressure on an astrologer, someone who's into astrology, with questions like that, right? Tell me about myself, like what's my fate, what's going to happen with me. It's like those come from a misunderstanding, right? Astrology is a system, a science and an art that you're able to where you're able to understand a lot about someone's nature, of who they are and who they are not, right? Now, obviously, you can understand so much about someone's psychological makeup, their past traumas, just a lot of the deeper parts, elements that comprise and make up their psyche, and a ton about their emotional nature, what they need to be happy, how they are relationally, right? Like what kind of relationship style they have, and more so like what type of relationship and friendship would be good for them. And obviously a lot about karma, a lot about life purpose, a lot about some of the more difficult things in life for them, right? Which is very person to person. So in doing that, you can sort of start to see themes, right, of areas of focus and talents, skills, but nothing is, and you obviously, you look at the North Node, that can give you like a huge clues on kind of where that person is trying to flow their energy in a high vibe way, in a high manifestation way. But overall, you know, there's just so much potential. And I don't think, like, I have a video about how to not allow astrology to self-limit you. And I don't think it got that many views, but it's a really important video because a lot of people will allow astrological symbolism to tell them who, to kind of be an excuse for why they can't be someone. And as much as I love astrology, as much as it has, shaped my life and really helped me become who I'm becoming, I guess, I still take everything with a grain of salt, in the sense of, like, there's some parts of the chart where it's like it's just so obvious, right? And I think, like I said, part of the beauty is not just who you are, but who you are not, and what you're going towards, not what, and what you're, going away from. But I think, like, a big part of life and a big part of existing as a human is following your heart. And um, a good example is love, right? I think that I've seen for myself and a lot of people that sometimes when you overanalyze and you think too much, like you put too much mental energy into something, right? It can just destroy, like, the natural flow of a relationship, like, and people want to put labels on things, and um so they'll come to someone like myself, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? Like, it is very interesting to understand. So, like, I'm not saying, I think, if you are dating someone or interested in someone, you're thinking about investing time in that person, I think it's a very smart idea. Come to me for a compatibility reading. I'll tell you everything I see, but I'm not going to tell you you should or you shouldn't be with this person, right? We're going to understand your natal chart, and we're going to look at the other person's, and we're gonna, put them together with the synastry and the composite and the house overlay and whatever else, right? And just be able to kind of understand, okay, well, this is the web of potentials. This is who this person, this is who you are astrologically, right? And this is how you interact with someone like this. If you're a very Sagittarian, Jupiterian person, it's going to be hard for you to be in a relationship with someone who has a lot of blockages, right? Or who has like a chart, let's say. And like I said, this is the thing too, is that you don't know what level of manifestation someone is at with their chart. Someone could have a Capricorn moon, Mars and Virgo, um, and a lack of fire and air, but be very advanced and work well. And sometimes opposites attract. I've seen, composite charts where like it was the most oppositions and squares and just super difficult, but the two people loved each other enough that they made it work. So yeah, you really can't allow the astrology to self-limit you. And also know that sometimes I feel like there's a synchronicity when God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, this has happened to me, knows that you understand astrology. I feel like I had like a few examples of this in my life in the past few years where it was almost like examples to show me that you can have perfect compatibility with someone or a perfect composite chart, perfect synastry, whatever, but still not, that still might not be meant to be. And it's almost like, okay. Um, so yeah, you want to understand the big picture, right? You understand more of like a qualitative understanding of like, okay, I work with this person or I don't work with this person, right? Um, and that's kind of like you know, that can be done over time, over with examples, understanding your nature, then understanding like, what someone else's would add to that. So beyond that, when we talk about astrology is not fortune telling, it's just kind of telling us about like a, potential web of potential, a web of potential realities. There is the person who might know a thing or two, but has a certain fear of doing the thing that they need to do, and they, unconsciously they know that it's all going to come back to that, but they're hoping that the astrologer can tell them something else, right? Let's say it's about boundaries, which is a very common one, or you have to break up with this person, or you're in a toxic relationship. This is a karmic pattern. Sometimes you don't need the astrology. Like I just had a message from a comment on one of my videos, and I really wanted to help this person because it was very sad to see someone comment something like actually thinking that they might die because of someone that they're with, and how they have to get a restraining order. And like I told her, just DM me, just message me, right? And I'll just send you some audio, or you can, I can maybe I can help, right? Either way, uh, like my main thing I told her was that astrology, like, because she was asking, like, are there any transits that, she's basically like asking me to like look at her astrology to kind of see if there's anything that would show death, or like something really bad happening. And what I told her was like, there are astrologers who specialize in this, but typically what they do is that they take someone like Ozzy Osbourne just died, right? And they're able to look at the chart of the death after the fact and realize, okay, it was this point, it was that point, right? But there's just so many potentials. And I told her also, this could be like a physical death or a symbolic death, and they can both feel very similar, especially if it's like a trend that's been going on for so many lifetimes, right? If it's like, let's say, a people pleasing or codependency issue, and you've been doing really good in other areas from an evolutionary kind of soul growth standpoint, but then this one area you haven't been, of like having solid boundaries with people you haven't been doing good at. Well, imagine like this is like your 100th time trying to pass this test. And even more so, I told her a lot of times, this is a perfect example of a time where you should feel into your heart, where you should feel into your body, your intuition, your gut, and allow that to guide you because you already know what you need to do. You know, I could look at the chart. I could definitely probably find a lot related to this because the astrology will show, something in the natal chart related to this tendency and to boundaries, etc. But I think that when we start to move away from that very logical sense of like, okay, this is right, this is wrong, um, and start to need something like astrology to kind of back us up in every situation, well, it kind of disempowers us. But yeah, so overall, astrology is a system where you can understand yourself better, but it's kind of like digging, you might like dig one hole and then through your life you kind of dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, right? Um, and what I mean by that is that you might learn, okay, I have moon in this sign or moon square Pluto. And you might get like the base understanding of what that means and how that shows up in your life. But then when you've like heard that for the first time, your awareness is open to that, to seeing that play out in your life, right? So you gain more and more examples through having the lived experience in this new way of seeing the world, right? That's another big thing of astrology. It gives you a new way of creating meaning. There's one of the most important things is creating meaning, right? In the stories we tell ourselves. So if at the forefront of astrology is, the assumption that that we're souls that are evolving, um, through karma, through soul evolution, which isn't about money. It's not about power. It's not about things that the ego wants. It's about what the soul wants, which is a reflection of God, right? If that's the assumption, well, then just by following, what the chart's telling us, it's, going to move us towards a version of ourselves and a version of our lives that, from this earthly perspective, if you look at it from this conditioned perspective, that some people look at it through and their values are all messed up, it's going to lead you astray. But if you ignore that and you can just look at the astrology and say, okay, like, you know, I am a healer. I'm here to help people, even though I feel like I want to get a lot of attention or be valued for, such and such. It's in my greatest interest and in the greatest interest of me as a human, as one of God's creations, to help other people, right? To take my talents and put them in a place where I'm able to fulfill, something in my chart related to being there for other people. So, there's so many things, but so that's just to show that astrology goes so much deeper than just telling me about myself or just even like it's about a new way of seeing life and seeing truth. I always say that when your truth, which is ninth house Sagittarius archetype, right, Jupiter, when your truth is aligned with something, let's say, I always say this, but it's like when your truth is like very material, like the most important things in life are power, looking and appearing powerful to other people and successful. Well, then, the life, Dharma, 10th house, what you do with your time, your outer life purpose will probably be very aligned with ego and very aligned with trying to prove to other humans that you're the best, or whatever. And I get it, like it's a very human thing, but everything needs balance. There's nothing wrong with success and with obviously with chasing money and making a better life for yourself and your family. But if the ninth house for you is more about like I want to discover truth, I want to discover, um, I want to help people, I want to kind of just keep learning, etc. Well, then that's going to change what you're really, really trying to do. You're going to be a lot more open-minded and you're going to look at kind of the reality that you're presented in a way because astrology is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is about like a different perspective, like seeing, in the future beyond the surface, kind of it's more Plutonian. But the point is that astrology is also philosophy, right? Or it gives the foundation for a philosophy of a spiritual life where now we have a certain language, right, that we can apply to our experience. So the more you kind of understand this, the less anxiety, the more you can start to see the ups and downs of life as bearable, right? It doesn't take away the pain. That there's no spiritual bypassing here. It's like, you still, I don't care how spiritual you are, if you go through like insane Pluto transits, like you're still feeling that shit. But at least you have a perspective that I'm going through a Pluto transit, not I'm going nuts or I'm losing my mind or this is happening to me because I'm a bad person. And you have at least that idea. So as you can probably tell, once you start kind of open that book, this is like when I teach astrology, like I'm really like, I'm not just teaching you how to read a chart, I'm teaching you a way of thinking. When you open that book, when you open that Pandora's box, if you have that thing in you, it can be very obsessive, right? It can be something, and it's a beautiful thing to study. Right? I had like a holy lady from India years ago telling me that astrology is the most worthy study on earth. And obviously, like different everyone can kind of has their own situation, and not everyone's meant to be an astrologer, right? But having at least an understanding of your astrology, of your kids' astrology, if you're a parent, um, if there's been something really difficult with your family and it still holds you back, or with a ex-partner or a partner currently, understanding that astrology, like, these are all things. Like I have live sessions for all these. I'm not selling myself right now. I'm just saying these are all areas you can learn as well, right? Where when you start to understand the dynamics beneath something as opposed to just seeing it as like good or bad, it's what a lot of people do because humans have a desire a need to organize reality in a certain way. That's why racism exists, in my opinion, right? Because things like that, right? Where it's like in astrology, I can just look at someone and be like, oh, that's a Pisces sun, Aquarius moon, with Mars and Scorpio, whatever, right? Um, and that's my way of organizing people. So I'm not seeing, I'm not seeing what race someone is or what religion someone is or what country, I can see the cultural aspect, of course, like that. That's definitely a big thing, you know. But I'm not looking at it as like this determinant. Like I understand that, humans are just humans, right? At the end of the day. And this is the kind of thing that's so empowering to people that of course, if you're someone who believes in the suppression of certain things by certain people and you know not to go down that route too much, but if you are someone who believes that astrology and powerful teaching like esoteric teachings like that are used by elites but held back, it would make sense because if you're an elite, that implies that you're above other people. And what is power? Power is not knowledge is power. Wisdom is power, right? If you know something other people don't about reality, then you have the edge. So that's kind of how it goes with astrology, numerology, these different studies. There's a lot that's been hidden from us, but then God somehow gives some people I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking, people who have gone and discovered and even people who've like translated ancient texts, right? The ancient people that came before us, from Atlantis, Lemuria, Egypt, right? Civilizations like that, Mayan civilization, right? Like people who knew a lot, the Vedas, of course, in India. Um, Somehow there is this divine synchronicity. If you look at if you think about like, well, why does not everyone know about it? Earth is not meant to, Earth is a crazy place to incarnate. I've always been told this by, powerful people spiritually. It's a very crazy place to incarnate. And it's like the Wild Wild West. So it would make sense. Like, why is there Mars and Pluto? Why do Mars and Pluto both exist? Those two planets, when they come together, create war or violence, right? When there's tension between those two planets. Like, same with Mars and Uranus. So it's like, why would Mars exist as a planet if there wasn't like some kind of way that God operates where you get the light by being exposed to the dark, right? You see that all the time in the world where a heroic act was only possible because of a dark act. Like, someone saved someone's light from someone dark who was trying to ruin it, right? So all these things are tough to understand in the sense of like when you look at it from that perspective of like this, like everything has to be proven and logical, right? But even more with the philosophy element is, how reincarnation plays into astrology, right? Like how by understanding the nodes, by understanding like a lot of the outer planet placements and just kind of the overall vibe of the chart, I can be like, okay, well, this person has a karmic, and understand someone's experience. I can understand, okay, well, this person has this tendency that they're trying to break. Like, that follower of mine I told you about in my that message, like that's likely something that's been lifetime to lifetime, lifetime. And how much easier, like and it goes back to the whole thing with like, empowering people and the elites and all that. Um, if you're if you knew that this current struggle you have in your life has been something that's been 20 or 30 past lives in a row that you've gotten it wrong, right? Where you took the path of least resistance but least growth. Um, how much more motivation would that give you to just get it right? Like, especially a great example of that is like addiction. People look at addiction and that's completely a karmic thing, right? Overcoming addiction is extremely hard. And a lot of people, that's like a big part of their life, because that involves so much shadow work. You know what I mean? Like there's such a Plutonian element to that, like having to go deep within your own trauma and feel things and all that, right? So yeah, there's just a lot, and with the whole philosophy element or topic, it's like yeah, like when you see things as okay, I'm just here right now for this incarnation, as opposed to like this is it. It's a big change, right? And I think that spirituality is like a very unique. It's a very personal journey. It's very personal. It's person to person. It's different for me than it is for you, right? And not just because you're meditating and doing yoga and wearing certain clothes doesn't make you spiritual, right? It's someone everyday people can be just as spiritual. Um, it's just like it's a different path person to person. So I think that you can really understand a lot, or at least you can really use a lot of the philosophy that's embedded in astrology, especially when you start to see like, damn, like all this shit is really true. Like, how does this guy like if you're getting reading from me, like how does this guy like know all this stuff about me? Like, how can he? Like, I barely told this, talk to anyone about this, right? Um, if that can be true, then the system and the philosophy that it's based on or attached to can be true, right? Anyways, a little ramble video today. I don't have a microphone back. I didn't bring it with me because once again, I'm in a place that I thought I was going to be in for a few days, but I've been here longer. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. I hope that this was helpful for anyone. Because yeah, there are just a ton of misunderstandings around how astrology is used and kind of like what you can expect out of it. And I think like the grand thing I'll say, the grand finale is that it's not some like quick like boom boom. Okay, let me tell you something. Let me tell me something about myself. Okay, this. Yeah, I can tell you something about your moon sign. I can tell you like about like the interplay of the sun and moon and just like key placements I see. Okay, oh, you have Saturn in the fifth house. Oh wow. Oh, okay, you have ninth house Uranus and ninth house Neptune. Okay, wow. I could see a lot of things. Oh, you have Venus and Mars in Aquarius, and you have Uranus on the descendant. All right, you're like this in love. Like I can say these things, but ultimately it's a system of deepening over time with effort and with introspection, for yourself and for other people. It gives you an ability to see it yourself for who you are and also other people for who they really are, right? And that when it comes especially to relating to other people, especially people that you have difficult energy with and that things seem really hard, you start to understand, oh, well, okay, we have completely different natures. Maybe you're like a Sag moon, that person is a Capricorn moon with all Earth and water placements, right? And maybe you're, Sag moon with all Aquarius and Leo and all that, right? So there's just different types of people, and it doesn't mean you still love everyone equally. It's just that there's some people that you vibe with and you want to spend all your time with and talk with and this and that. And there's some people where, maybe just sometimes and you can still love those people on a soul level just as much. And I think that astrology really helps see those differences. And when it comes to fortune telling, as I said before, it can give us an idea of the web of potentials, but it's really about understanding that this is not here to disempower us, that our free will, we can always overcome. Yogananda in his book Autobiography of Yogi, he said that each year he went to an astrologer to figure out the most difficult time to undertake his most difficult task of the year during that time to prove that he could not any disbelief in astrology. Of course, he went to the astrologer for a reason, but to show that his will could overcome any type of tough transit. So, with that said, that's it for today. I know the audio is probably not great, but and this video keeps doing this thing. It's a new MacBook. It keeps like, I don't know. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. And like I said, if anyone wants to book any type of reading, just go to jesseastrology.com. We can do a live session. We can do a class. Astrocartography. I do not just not just zoomed out astrocartography, but I do directional lines, like really zooming in on a city or on a state, a region, and especially for people who want to move or people who just really want to understand. Okay, I live in, let's say, LA. Like, what are the best areas for me for this? What are the worst? Like, I can do that for you. So, any city, any place in the world, and compatibility, predictive, everything. So, with that said, thank you guys, and I'll talk to y'all later. And leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. All right. Ciao.